Hi and welcome to this DCP Web Blender 2.8 tutorial. In today's tutorial we'll be creating this animation sequence using Blender. So if I click play here, you see this globe spinning with these circular shapes rotating around it. If I zoom out a little bit, it'll be a bit easier to see and understand what's going on. So they're all rotating and then they'll all fall back into the same position where they started from. So we use Blender to do this. It's quite an easy tutorial, so we'll go ahead and make this animation sequence. And you can apply some text in front of it and you can create a sort of animation sequence, maybe with your company logo or something like that spinning around the globe, something like this. So let's go ahead and minimize Blender and we'll open a new Blender file. Okay, so like usual we'll click on General, we'll click on the cube and delete that, and we'll click on the light source and delete that as well. We'll go to File, Save As, and on my desktop I've got a folder here and we just call this just going to call it Sphere Animation 01 to give your file a sensible name, and we'll press number 7 on our keyboard. We'll press Shift A and insert a circle. So we've got a circular shape here. We'll go into edit mode here and then we're going to press Shift A to insert another circle. So now we've got two circles. So we want to scale, so we're going to press S to scale, but we're going to hold down on the control key and we're going to move in one segment like this. So when you hold down the control key, it will constrain it and it will move it in one square like this. We'll press A on our keyboard to select all of the elements inside this this edit here. Then we'll go to the face and we'll fill here, fill. So we're filling in the face, right? So let's go back to object mode. Now we've got this sort of circular shape and we want to go to our modifier and we want to go to the subsurface here and we want to set it to 3. So subsurface view and render, set it to 3, then click apply, then right click and shade smooth. So we've got a nice smooth circle now like this. So the next thing we want to do is add a press Shift A to add a empty plane axis. So you see that there's this plane axis here in the middle of this circle. Then we can go to the click back on the circle here, go to the modifier, add a modifier, and this time we want to add a array modifier. So we've got this array modifier. We want to turn off the relative offset and turn on object offset and select the empty. Then we want to go back and click on the empty and we want to press S to scale. I want to scale it out so that we get, so when you press S to scale, so click on the empty, press S and then drag your mouse out so that you've got a little gap sort of in between the two circles like this. We'll click on this middle circle, so the one in the center, and then we're going to press R to rotate on the X axis. So press R then X and then type in 90. So now we've got one circle like flat facing forward and we've got another one lying flat like this. So with the array modifier we want to set it to let's see, we'll set this one, in this example we'll set it to 6, right? So we've got 3 going this way and then 3 like this. So we've got this sort of shape going on here, which is quite interesting shape. Now let's go to File, Save, and we're going to press Shift A to insert a UV sphere. So now we have a UV sphere that sits in the center. Let's press S to scale and then we'll drag it down, so we're going to scale it down. So it's about this sort of size, right? We don't want it to be too big, something like this. Then we'll go to our add modifier and we'll surface subdivide and we'll leave it at 2 and 2 this time, like this. Click apply, then right click and shade smooth. So now we've got the basic elements that we need. So we can go ahead and animate this using Blender, but we need to set up our environmental lighting and also our texture for this particular animation sequence. So let's go to the shading. Let's go to our world settings and we're going to set up the shader like we normally do. So let's zoom in here a little bit to make it easier for you to see. So we've got the background here. Let's press Shift A and we want to insert a shader background. So we've got 2 backgrounds. Let's press Shift A again and we want to insert a shader, mix shader, and drag it in between these 2. So we've got this sort of setup now. Got the world here, mix shader, the background, we've got another background here, and we'll connect this background to the shader here, like this. We'll press Shift A and insert a texture, environmental texture here. Shift A, and we want an input coordinate. Then Shift A, we want a vector mapping. Let's make a little space here. And then Shift A, finally, we want to import a light path here. So connect the generated here to the vector to the vector here, the color to the color here, and then the is camera ray, this top one, we want to connect it to the factor here. Let's go to File, Save, and now we really need to go and download a environmental texture, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Let's minimize this. We'll open up this folder and we'll type in hdri. So we'll make a folder called hdri and we'll open up our browser. Then we'll go to hdri haven. I'm going to download the usual map I download, so we'll click on browse 200. We'll open up this hdri folder and then we'll go to the nighttime. We'll download this one, so I'll put a link to this in the YouTube description. So you've got a, let's make a quick note here. So let's go ahead and download this one, and we'll grab one more as well. Let's grab this one here. So I'll put links to both of these in the YouTube description so you can download them as well. And we'll drag them into the hdri folder here. So we've got two of them in there. Let's close this and close this. We'll go back to Blender and we'll click open here, and then we'll select that fireplace one as an example, right? So this will give us slightly different coloring to my example at the beginning, but we can experiment with that afterwards. So let's click on this this sphere here, and we'll go to the object data. So we're going to see the object data now. And what we'll do is, let's see. So we'll click new, and we might as well turn on our HDRI or turn on our render settings here, render, so we can see what's going on. So it's like this gold color. This is going to be slightly different to my example, but we'll experiment and we'll change the HDRI map to the one that I used in the original example, and we'll see what it looks like. But this might turn out pretty well as well. So let's see. So here we've got our principal shader. We're going to press Shift A and insert a, let's see, we want a color ramp, right? So converter, color ramp. We want to press Shift A and do a vector bump here, and then Shift A, and we want a texture, and we want a wave texture here. So we'll connect the factor to the factor here, the factor to the height here, the color to the base here, and then the normal to the normal here. Then we'll set the scale to -0.3. We'll set the distortion here to, let's see, 38 or 39, something like this. The detail we'll set to 5.5, and then the detail scale we'll leave at 1. Then we'll sort out the colors, so you can almost see like this sort of planet style sort of land going on here, right, on this globe. That's kind of what we wanted. So let's see. In the strength here, we'll set it to 0.23, and then the distance we'll set to around, let's see, about around 4.7, something like this. Okay, so the metallic we're going to turn that all the way up, and then the roughness we're going to set to 0.12, and then specular we can turn all the way off. So we've got this shiny object now, right? And what we want to do is apply that to the rings as well. So we'll click on this inside ring, this inside one, any of them really you can click on, and then click on this drop down, this little drop down here, and select the same material. Now they both have the exact same material. So let's go back to our world settings, and in the world settings, in the background, let's change it to black. You can pick a different color if you want, but I'm going to set it to black. If you want to choose a different color, then just simply choose it from here. But I think this works best with black, so it's going to stand out quite well. So let's go to the layout, and we'll click on the render settings here, and let's just turn off the overlays and we can see what's going on. So we can see this. I think it actually looks pretty good in gold actually, but we can experiment with the colors. Let's get the animation done, and then I'll show you how to play around with the colors. You can change the colors and do all that good stuff. So let's go to the render settings here and turn on bloom, and then in the bloom settings we're going to turn the threshold all the way down, turn the knee all the way down. The radius will bring that down a little bit. Let's bring that down. Let's increase the intensity, and we just want to get this like nice sort of glow edge around it, right? Something like this. Then we want to position our camera now. So let's turn back on the overlays. So we can see our overlays here. And let's click on the camera and then go to the object data and set the, so make sure the camera is selected. Go to the object data, set the X, the Y and the Z, all the locations and all the rotations, set them all to 0. So the camera is basically facing down now. And on the X, we want to rotate it to 90 degrees. So we set the X rotation to 90, so it's facing forward now, the camera, right? It's facing in this direction. So we want to bring the camera backwards. So on the Y, we want to set it to a minus value. So let's set it to like minus 5.6. Then press 0 on your keyboard. When you press 0, you can see what the camera sees now. We want to bring the camera in a bit more. We don't really want to see the edges around here, around the side. So let's move the camera forward a little bit to around here. Somewhere like here would be good. So I'm setting it to around minus 4.46, but we want to have the camera pointing at an angle as well. So on the Z axis, we want to bring it up. So I'm going to set it to around 0.47, and then on the X axis, we want to rotate it downwards, right? So we want to be looking down at this object. So you can just experiment and position the camera how you feel it looks good. So I think something around here will be pretty good. Let's bring it down a little bit. Because if you look at it at a flat angle, you won't really see these circles until they rotate, right? So let's go to File, Save, and then we want to set our keyframes. So we're going to set them to 240 frames. Let's go to the render output. This here, the output here, and we'll set it to 30 frames a second. So set it to 30 frames a second. We'll press the record button, and then we're going to click on the circles here. Click on the circles. Let's go to the object data, and in the X we're going to press the letter I. So press the letter I on the rotation here on the first frame. So you get a keyframe here. Let's move straight to the end frame, which we can just click on this little option here to move to the end frame, and we'll press the letter I again, and then we're going to rotate this. So we want to rotate it. We've got choices now, right? We can rotate it on the X axis like this, so you can have it rotating like this, but I think it looks better when we rotate it on the Y axis, so they're all moving like this. So let's see, we want to set this to 180 degrees on the Y axis here. So if we go back and click play, they'll rotate around like this. We can turn off our overlays for the minute just to see what it looks like. So I think that's okay. What we'll do is go back to the first frame, and we'll click on the sphere here, and we will make sure the record button is on, and we'll again press the letter I on the rotation here to insert a keyframe. Let's go to the last frame again. We'll press the letter I here again, and this time we want to rotate it. Let's see, we want to rotate on the Z axis, so we'll rotate this 360 degrees. This is going to rotate once, and this will rotate back into the same position at 180 degrees. So we'd untick the record button and click play. Now we can see they're all rotating like this. So now you can go and experiment, you can play around with the settings, you can change how the camera moves, you can have it zoom in and out. Maybe we do that as well. So let's go back to the first frame, hit the record button, click on the camera, and then in the location we'll press the letter I. So let's press the letter I on the location. Let's go to the very last frame and press the letter I as well. So we've got the location for the first and end frame. Let's go back to the first frame, and on the Y we'll move it in a little bit closer like this. Something like this, and then if we go back and click play, it will start to slowly move out as these objects rotate like this. So you can play around with the settings, you can experiment and see what you think looks good. This is really down to you now to kind of experiment with. Really, I want to get this sphere more centered out. There's a bigger gap at the top than at the bottom here. So all I'll do is go to the last frame and move it on the z-axis down a little bit like this. Somewhere like here would be pretty good. So let's just play that one more time. Okay, so let's go to the very last frame. So we're on the very last frame here, 240. Let's go back into the shader, and inside the shader we've got the fireplace, right? This is the you can middle mouse click here actually and rotate around, or you can just zoom in past the camera so you can see it a bit clearer, something like here. And we can change the map, we can change the settings in here, so we can rotate it like this. You can get a different set of colors going through there, so you can ripple the colors through. You can experiment and see what sort of colors look well, so you can get like reds in here as well, and then you can go and play that again and see what it looks like. You can also click on the open button here, and you can go and click the other map. This is the other one, so we're using the fireplace at the moment. We'll click this one, click open, and now you can see you've got a completely different sort of color scheme, right? Just by changing the map. Then you can rotate these around and get some really nice colors off of this map. I kind of like this map because it's got some blues and purples and all sorts of colors going through it. I think it looks pretty cool. So here you can see the colors coming through on this one. Let's just go back to the layout and you can see the difference. We can click play here. You see it's got more like a purpley sort of metallic color to it, but it's got some yellows and stuff going through it as well. So this one actually I like a lot. Let's go back to the shader. You can keep rotating this around and get some other colors in there. It's down for you to experiment really. So I'll leave it like that. The other thing you can do is click on this sphere, go back into the object, and then you can click on this white handle here, the white handle, click here, and then change the color. Now you can start experimenting and get purples and pinks and mix the colors together. You can get some really nice colors. This is exactly pretty much the setup I had before. I had the globe sort of red, and it had these purple colors going through it. So this looks very similar to the original example I showed you at the beginning. Just the animation sequence has been done a bit differently. We've got the camera zooming out where I didn't do that before. So you can go ahead and render this out now. I'll leave you to experiment with it. I kind of liked the combination of this sort of pink and purple going together, right? That looks pretty cool. You can click on the plus sign here and add in another color. So you can click on that middle one there. You can change that to a different color. Now you've got almost like oranges, purples, and basically the way it's working, if I click on this black one here on the outside, let's click on the black one. If we can get, yep, click on the black one. If I was to change that to white or change that to green, if you think on the outside edge is this side here. So on the very outside of our object, we're going to have green. Then as we get closer to the middle, we're going to get yellow. Then when we get right to the middle, we're going to get purple. So think of this as the outside of the object on the edge here. So when I change that green to any other color, you can see, look, blues are coming through here, but there's no blue in the middle. So think of it that way. The outside is these colors, and as you get closer to the center, they'll change color. So you can have a crazy sort of color scheme like that if you want. I think that looks a bit too much, so we'll click on this blue, and maybe we'll go for like these sort of pinky purple colors, right? Some sort of uniform color scheme. Maybe we'll get a bit of blue in there, something like this. So I've got these shades going through it. Now you can see that in here. So if you want to export this as an animation, untick the record button. Let's go to file, save. Simply go to the output settings here. Click on the output settings. Then go to PNG here and set it to AVI JPEG. You can leave these settings pretty much as they are. I'll normally click RGB here, color RGB, but I think as default Blender will set it as RGB anyway. Click on the folder here, go to your desktop, click on the tutorial folder you created, give it a file name, so just let's call this animation-01, click accept, and then press Control and F12, and then you can go and render out this animation and it will create an AVI JPEG file for it. So I'll leave you to do that. I'm just going to let this render out, and maybe I'll use that in a future tutorial. So let's minimize this while that's rendering out. That's the end of this tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you on the next DCP web tutorial.